I'm really glad to be here. I'm honored to be here. And I only have 25 minutes, so I would like to be as useful as possible within this time. So, psychology of gamification. What is playing in evolutionary and psychological sense? That is like, what I hope to do is entertain the deeper philosophical aspect of gamification, and then bring it back to earth, to capitalistic values, legs on the ground, engagement, loyalty, virality, how to make more money, basically. And of course, how it's been used and why it works, or how. My own background is I have a BA in semiotics and anthropology. I've studied here and there, been more than 3 years in the game industry. The same amount of time I've been teaching commercial video games design in University of Tartu. And I guess the greatest reason for me to be here is actually because I'm just interested in such stuff, especially psychology of emotions and motives, motivational psychology. This is what we're all talking about here, basically. And altogether, it's just one big systems theory. It's systems within systems. And this is a little game we made with 3 guys, or 2 guys, and it was really successful. So this is my achievement unlocked. One of the most successful Estonian games to the moment. So, anyway, to the business. What is a game and what is playing? Any bold definitions from the audience? No, not at this time. By the way, I'll take 3 questions during my speak, and afterwards it's going to be a competition. So whoever are the 3 boldest ones, feel free to ask anytime. To answer that question, we need to, before that, answer a deeper question. Who is playing? How can you understand what is playing if you don't understand who is playing? And in this case, in the systems theory perspective, what is the role or the essence of a player in the game? And my answer to this is very simple. Human being is a causal awareness system. We're all living in systems that are in systems. And we have something unique here that causes stuff, that changes the environment that's around it. When you're a beautiful girl, then wherever you go, all the rooms are cleaned. Everything smells nice. That's the effect you have on the world. People make it beautiful even before you get there. That's your causal field around you. When you're an aggressive person, when you're a violent person, then before you arrive, people, I don't know, get some weapons ready or something. So that's what human beings are. And this is the rabbit hole into the depth of meaning here. Because how we can be causal systems in this seemingly deterministic reality of ours is we create little models of everything outside into our brain. So whenever I look at something, when I look at the screen, I create a little model of the screen into my head. I don't know if it's really there, but I know the model is here. And so I play around with the model in my head to predict how it's going to behave. So, and since I've learned the ways of technology today, I know that if I touch this, then this probably changes. So I do this, and yes, I'm able to predict my future. I predict my hand raises. Yay. What I'm trying to get at is that awareness, especially human awareness, enables us to do something totally unique. It enables us literally to predict the future. And the more accurate our prediction, the more we determine the future. If I predict the future with 100% accuracy, then I determine the future, literally. So that's something very important here. So there's everybody's doing it all the time. We're looking at the past and present and creating a model of future out of that. And whoever is better at creating models of future predicting, then they are better at life. Everybody's playing the great prediction game. Whoever predicts the best is most successful in life. And the coolest part is predicting human behavior, because then you're also determining, depending on your emotions and motives, of course, the human behavior. And how playing comes into this. Well, since modeling reality and trying to understand it via playing around with models is one of the core things we are doing, then of course it must be valuable. But in real life, there are very serious problems when we are talking about predicting the future. Namely, we're not accurate, and our predictions fail. Often, sometimes. So what is playing? It is a very specific way to model reality. And namely, it is modeling a virtual reality, or the whole modeling is encompassed in another context. It is voluntary, pleasant, problem-solving learning. All good games must end and begin voluntarily and be games for everybody involved. If these conditions are not met, then they're not good games. If a cat is playing with a mouse, then for a cat it is a game. For a mouse, it's a horror story before he or she dies. So it's not a good game. And there are manipulation games between humans, and the dark side is there. That's all I'm saying. And if you do it publicly, it becomes competition. Because when we talk about publicity in general, then let's remember that the competition of prediction and all social competition is rooted deeply in biology. We are basically programs. We're machines that were programmed to make backup copies of themselves. We rose higher. We got like new ideals, equality, honesty, empathy, all these great things. But we're still built of matter, and the matter has a very specific program, make copies of itself. So the layer of social competition that goes down to sexuality is still there, always, and the competition always happens. And only by being aware of it, you're able to rise higher than it. And but this is something why modeling reality in a public setting becomes competition, because whoever models reality better must have better DNA, must have better potential offspring. And if the modeling is done for itself to demonstrate mastery of modeling reality, it becomes art. Even making bread can become art if you're able to model houses or castles out of it, if you make gingerbread houses. And if you sell that art, it often becomes entertainment. And it can also become work. So, if game is a model of reality, because games are that, all games have certain similarities to certain non-game situations in reality. When we're talking about sports, they're nothing else than gamified actions that used to have practical value, starting with archery. Running is a very practical application. It used to be every day a necessary part of survival. So we're still showing how much it is an art and doing it publicly, competing. Or in other words, games are just tools for playing, or systems for playing. Game is the set of causal elements. Basically, game is a tool for playing. Something that enables you to create these models of reality in a more explicit way not inside your brain, inside your head, but also outside as an action or on the screen or with little toys. So that's what's playing, and that's what is a game. And now we know what's happening when a human being is playing something. And of course, animals do it as well. And in their case, the exercise aspect of playing is more evident if they practice fighting, for example. Now, humans used to practice fighting as games as well, and we still do that. People play first-person shooters and then become soldiers later on, unfortunately. So it still happens. And no, the next slide is a little extra I put into this presentation. It is a leap away from gamification and into game design, but it's relevant to this talk. So this infographic, I was helped by UX expert from Trinidad, René Rebane, to create it, and it's still not 100% ready, but it shows the elements of game experience. The experience itself can be dissected into elements and seen how the value of game emerges from interaction of these elements. So we have the interaction structure above, the elements, the actual creatures and powers and weapons and behaviors interacting, and the user versus computer and so forth. It's all represented by audio visuals, and on top of it, it has a setting, story, and text. Basically, a meaning, a context of meaning. When the first dimension deals with just causal interactions, and the second one deals with communicating that and making it visible and tangible. The third one gives meaning to this, and also intellectual value, if it talks about something meaningful. And this is all reflected by, enforced, but also shaped by the mood. These all carry a certain cocktail of emotions which create the mood. And this together forms a game experience. We can imagine that all this is one frame. This all happens in, let's say, 1 minute, and we can picture putting another slide like that next to it, which is the next second. And if we create a stride like that, we get an illustration of like what happens in the game in the sense of the experience. But that's games. Why playing is good. Why we here are dealing with stuff that is beneficial to humanity. That's really, it's very motivational information if you have employees working with games. The thing is, when you're modeling reality and predicting the future and then testing out your predictions, you take risks. But in real life, when you take risks, suffering ensures at one point or another. In games and in virtual settings, in virtual models, it is okay to take risks because they are virtual. There's no real suffering. And that allows us to be creative, because you can't be uncreative when you take risks. When your brain encounters the unknown, it has to become creative. It can't carry on what it has done, because that's something different now. And when you're using creativity, you're being individual. You can't be creative and totally non-original, but individuality is something which we enjoy. That's why people like games so much. It enables them to better model reality, because they can model taking risks in reality, for example. And the practical value for game industry professionals is, of course, that games and gamification provide a context in which lots of things are better and easier. In our talk, we use all the good stuff in the games as a motivational method. So, most of you probably already know that what is the essence of gamification. It's noteworthy to mention that it's strongly related to user experience and marketing, and also user interface design, because these all aspects come into play when you start to gamify something like an IT product, for example. When you're doing gamification, you're adding some features, then you have to take care of the visual side in any case. And when you're already on that, you'll probably make it better as well. So this is an extra bonus. And you're thinking about the marketing side of this as well. So it's a solution that requires many aspects to be taken care of, and is therefore really, even if the gamification part is not the central value that comes out of this, then the other things around it can be still immensely beneficial for the project. Now, what are the actual qualities that gamification can improve when we talk very generally? How to get people to become interested in your project and invest their attention so they become engaged, how they stay there, and how they invite other people in, basically. Loyalty, virality. We all know Eurovision. We're Estonians. We're little guys who want to be famous because our DNA is out there competing. If they win, it means our DNA has some value as well, let's be honest. Like, we were better than, well, I'm not going to mention any countries here, but this is like down there still the biological heritage of our pride and everything. So what is Eurovision? It is actually a gamified singing contest, nothing else. You have public singing, but when it's public and when it's being compared, it becomes a competition. And the progress of who is winning is visualized by points. And the position in the score table, of course, is the current status. And it is also something that gives viewers a context where they can compete in their ability to predict the future. Like, I'm going to predict that these guys win or these guys win. I told you so. Well, they didn't win, but it wasn't my mistake anyway. All these things. And these are actually the standard gamification methods, the most primitive, the most basic ones. You visualize the progress to the goal in normal life, in real life, it is very hard to distinguish borders. Everything is non-digital, everything is there's gray everywhere. It's really hard to tell if you're being successful or you're just a loser and you could be much more successful. It's really hard to tell if somebody likes you or just is friendly with you, you know the problem. So in games and in gamified settings, this is not a problem, because all the progress factors are quantified and listed. You know where you are, you know where you're going, and how much you still need to do to get there. And when you get there, at each mid-level, you get an achievement and badge and things like that. You get some more status. But behind this is the core aspect of life, ever involving progress, forever trying to achieve the optimal balance between the environment and the self, always trying to find the perfect harmony. But the environment keeps changing, so I have to keep changing as well. So if we can't achieve this quality, then at least get some quantity. If we can't get something really good, then let's get lots of medium stuff. That's what happens when people collect. When you don't believe in being able to create quality anymore, then you start to invest in quantity. Competition, cooperation, these are actually yin and yang in English. The Taoistic words, the really deep stuff. That's competition and cooperation. So, what is engagement? The essence of engagement. It is our wish to participate in this reality. We don't want to be cogs in the system. we want to make choices. We love making choices. Because whatever choice we do, we express our individuality. We express our deepest desires in any of our choices, just in a very small way. And this is, of course, the wish to be oneself. We all want to be eventually ideal versions of ourselves. So choices lets us get closer to this ideal. So that's how to create engagement. Allow people to use their individuality. And there's a way to achieve optimal engagement. It's a scientific thing. A guy with a really cool name figured it out, Csikszentmihalyi. And here come the examples of positive gamification solutions, but there's only 1 minute before the question part arrives. So I just want to say that there's an odd job service portal in US. When you're a job seeker, you seek jobs, and other people put up their applications. You fill them, you get points. The more points you have, the more credibility you have, the more trust you have, because everybody sees that you have done so many jobs. And this is something where gamification has been applied beautifully, and someday it might significantly reduce unemployment in the world. A very great thing. But let's just skip over this and get to some other essence parts. Community. What is the main value of community? First, it creates us out of me. And us is valuable to people. And when me becomes us, then I want to stay in us. It means I become loyal to the context, to the environment where I can feel that I am us instead of me. So I like staying in my community. So this, first of all, creates loyalty. But when I already like it there, I also want to invite my other friends in. So virality emerges. Pyramid marketing, dark side of virality. Maybe in the future it can be used ethically. Non-digital gamification, just have to say this. These games, they've been around, like gamifying solutions have been around since trading began. Buy 9th and get the 10th free. This is literally visualized progress to victory. And my favorite example, the traditional martial arts, the belts you wear, before they took color coding. Before that, you wouldn't know who to pick a fight with. You didn't know if the guy was a black belt or a green belt. So lots of people got their ribs kicked in. But when they started using that, then literally gamification saved hundreds of ribs in Japan in like 16th century or whatever it happened. So that is the power and value of gamification. And there's this regarding score tables, there's this particular strange game that some gentlemen are playing about scoring. Anyway, this is the summary here. Engagement. How to create engagement. This upper part is all basic, and down here, this is the deeper stuff. Using challenge. Like, what is the most intuitive way to motivate somebody to do something? The most counterintuitive way, actually, make it harder. Instead of making it easier, make it harder and create a challenge. The greatest example is if you need to write a story, you have an empty white paper, you don't know what to do. But if you give limitations, each word has to start with the letter A, and you have 3 sentences, 1 minute, and there has to be a guy called Jack in it, then you have almost a story ready. So challenge is the advanced method of gamification. Then we have loyalty via community, and these are the techniques to create communities. There is actually a science of creating communities. And then when we have engagement and community in place, we can work on virality because we have the quality in place. We have what people like. So now we want just people to share it. So we make it simple and use additional other non-gamification or motivational methods, which you can find via this name. And of course, the two key things, emotional value and practical value. This is why we share good things, because we feel we're like emotional connection and we want them to be useful for other people. Yay, time for questions.
Yes, so, questions. That is first.
Hi. In
Hey.
your opinion, in which fields gamification should be avoided and which fields can benefit from it strongly?
Thank you. The first answer, gamification, is no magic bullet. Often the money could be spent better on just creating a good trailer or just doing more testing or more advertising. But in some settings, it is actually very useful. And I think one of the simplest contexts where it could be used is basically client relationship management and support, and I guess empowering client relationships, and most of all, digital solutions that have a social degree. When gamification works best in the environments where you can measure something by numbers, and you want higher numbers. When you give people some profiles, some overviews of their own value, or some feedback to their own behavior, and you measure that feedback, and you say that the more feedback there is, the higher is your value, then people instinctively want to start increasing the number that reflect their value. So if I have like a profile page that says that I have so many pictures, so many videos uploaded, so many likes in my career of Facebook or whatever, then people instinctively want to start raising those socially positive qualities. So in those settings, it would be good. Also, social competitive settings. When you have a social setting where people compete, that's a great environment.
Okay, that was microphone there. One question.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for a great presentation. I wish we could listen more to you. The question would be, when people compete, there's usually just one winner, or one team wins. When playing games, losing is no big deal, but when you insert gamification into some of the real life processes, then when someone loses, when one wins, others lose. How do you handle the frustration, and what is the downside of this in real life? Because you're striving towards better results, but in the end you get others frustrated because they didn't win. Thank you.
First of all, thank you. When somebody usually wins, others lose, this is quite a Western way to look at things. If we go towards the East, then usually when somebody wins, everybody wins. We have this strongly competitive culture here, and of course a good gamification designer would make sure that to cancel out or neutralize or avoid this conflict between winners and losers. For example, if you have just the first position and second position and third position, well, let's take a score table, results of a game, of like any game, a score table, and you show names in there and score behind the name. Then a simple solution is that let's say you have 30 participants and you highlight the first 10 with like golden numbers, next 10 in silver numbers, and last 10 in bronze numbers. So the worst thing could happen is you got a bronze medal. But since in your head you were taking part of Olympics, it's still great. You got a bronze in Olympics. So it's, I mean, if it has a good context. But generally, gamification, I think in the environments where you use gamification to support competition, then losing, like when the people are already competitive, they don't mind losing so much, then ideally the losing could fuel the motivation to try again. There's a game genre out there, it's called roguelike, and the essence of that genre is that the game regularly kills you, so you need to start over, and it's always unfair. So it's like a bit frustrating, but since those games are usually made so that starting over is actually one of the fun parts of the game, and each beginning is different, then you actually sometimes you even look forward to finally losing your last drops of blood and starting over with a fresh start. So that's just an example. Thanks.
Thanks. And one very quick exchange, and then we must move to the next presentation.
So thank you for your presentation. Actually, I have a question. Good games are engaging, so this is what we claim. And if we are thinking about user-centered design, and we want to involve users in designing gamified services, although they are not qualified to design good games. So how do you think about this?
Could you specify the...
So it's in the sense of we present good games to the people, they like it, they play, they are engaged.
Mm-hmm.
So now we are thinking about involving people in the design process, and that process will in somehow design gamified services. And for this, we need people that they are capable to design games, to design gamified services, so to think in the same way. So how we will involve the users, although they are not qualified to design games, in designing gamified services?
I guess my first question would be, what is the reason you want your users to design your gamified applications? What's the benefit? I think they could be your like first line testers, or you could involve them in the like as a part of the team, just somebody who represents your target persona. But crowdsourced design has many risks. Like just if we talk about design in a crowdsourced way, like when you engage lots of people to the design, but just being public about like, we are right now designing such a cool service. Whoever wants, come here and like have a leave a comment, leave your suggestions. We'll take account. I mean, that.
So it's not in this essence. I mean, the problem starts from the user need, and we want to involve the users in order to give them something that they will finally like and use. So, for instance, today in a presentation about the e-government services, there is over 600 services. 1 out of 3 has been used. This is what I grasped from the presentation. And if we want to involve people in designing such services to be more gamified and engaging, but the people, they don't have any qualification, or they are not qualified to design games. So how the approach of gamification is supporting the user-centered design, and somehow, in other words, I mean, sorry.
I guess I'm just I think that if you want to empower the creativity of your users, then perhaps you can do that already with your gamified solution, so that the solution itself, which you have created, allows them to be creative in it. But creating a service, designing a service, is just such a big, huge, and complex undertaking that I think it's like, hey, let's make a house, and let's not invite everybody else to talk about how it should be, but let's have them tell the architect as well how to build the house. I think that's too much, just too much to expect from the user. They just maybe want to buy a service. That's all they want to do. But if you do the service, if you incorporate yourself, like the creativity part into the service. For example, let's say that the whole service involves ordering something online. Like just regular, you order a service or product, and there's like this payment part where you pay. Why not, in the very end, when the user has gone through all the yes, okay, I agree and everything, and when they do the final thing, they can also choose something really cool that comes with an extra. Let's say that, yes, I purchased this, and then a thing says like, well, we can send you a box of chocolate, you can get a ticket for free ice cream, or you can get this music, and just choose your like extra bonus. And this choice already gives them something creative to do. It's their choice. Or you could do, let's say you have a pizza delivery service, and you can have a little online drawing board in the service thing, so the user draws down there what they want the pizza man to draw on their box. So like all these, or the more choices you give to the user, the more they use their individuality. But maybe we should like talk about it later on.
Okay, thanks to Edvin for a nice warm-up talk to